day one of the Senior Bowl practice. There's two guys who I not only see as first-round locks now, who were kind of on the fringe before, but they could be even top 20 picks. The day one Senior Bowl storylines. Let's get it.
This is Renner Ranks, the ultimate NFL rankings show. Part of the Locked On Podcast Network. Your team every day.
Welcome into today's episode of Renner Ranks, our go-to daily ranks podcast, part of the Locked On Podcast Network. Your team every day. Special shout out to those everydayers. Don't forget, like, subscribe, follow on YouTube, wherever you get your podcasts. I, of course, am Mike Renner, NFL draft analyst for The Messenger at Mike Renner on social media. This podcast is brought to you by FanDuel. Make every moment more. Right now, new customers get $150 in bonus bets guaranteed when you place a $5 bet. It's FanDuel.com/lockedon to get started. And as I said off the top, Senior Bowl day one. I'm at a Holiday Inn Express about a mile from Hancock Whitney Stadium where the Senior Bowl is being held down here in Mobile, Alabama. I was at practice yesterday. Took a while to get my credentials. I missed a little bit of the first half. We ended up watching the tape, though, afterwards. As you can see, I am sunburnt on the left half of my face because I was sitting in one spot in the bleachers all day. Idiot move on my part, but we'll fix that. We'll maybe go get some sunscreen today. Didn't expect January to be getting a sunburn, but here we are. And it was a great practice, great first day of practice. The biggest storylines, though, is what we're going to break down because the first day of practice is always like install for a lot of the plays. And so the positions that you want to get a handle on how they fit within a scheme, whether it's quarterback, safety, linebacker, you're not getting much the first day of practice from those positions because they're just learning basically the plays. And so a lot of the pass plays were play actions, not a lot of drop back passes, not a lot of stuff to evaluate. You can evaluate a little from an accuracy perspective. We'll maybe talk about that with Joe Milton, the Tennessee quarterback, at some point throughout this week, but going to focus more on kind of the overarching storylines throughout the week in terms of some of the top prospects, some of the loaded position groups down here. And the biggest storyline, the first one to me, is the guys not practicing. Obviously, this happens every year, but this was a lot of talent that was initially listed on the Senior Bowl roster that is not down here playing. So just wanted to give you guys a heads up on all the names that are, in fact, not suited up this week that we thought were going to be. Byron Murphy, the Texas defensive tackle. I think I even said on last week's podcast that I'd be surprised if this guy took a snap this week because he's going to be a top 25 pick. His tape was such, and obviously he's not even a senior, his tape was such this past year as a junior that he can rest on that. And again, a guy who had 14 games of tape to go off of. If you didn't like what you saw the last handful of games from him, the Senior Bowl wasn't going to change your mind. Troy Fautanu, the Washington offensive tackle, same story with him. 15 games. If you didn't get enough eval in 15 games and against the best competition those last few, that's on you. Michael Barrett from Michigan, the linebacker. Mike Sainristil, still the cornerback, slot corner from Michigan. Again, guys who have played that many times, that many games, 15 games against top competition their past few. We're not going to argue too much about them opting out. Cedric Pran, the Georgia center, opts out. Cooper Beebe, the Kansas State guard, keep saying opts out. Didn't show up here at the Senior Bowl. The one on this list, and I'll keep going through here, Jaden Hicks, the safety from Washington, a redshirt sophomore, not going to be here. Kalen Carson, the Wake Forest cornerback. Josh Newton, the TCU cornerback. Two guys who I really would have liked to have seen. I'm kind of surprised they didn't play. I thought they had something to prove. I don't think they're first or second rounders at this point. Kalen Carson, I don't even think maybe a third rounder at this point. So I don't know if those are injury related or whatnot, but I really would have liked to have seen those guys down here. The one guy I'm very surprised who opted out is Jalen Wright, the Tennessee running back, just because he hasn't played a ton of football. He is a true junior, I guess, third-year player coming out of Tennessee, has never had 150 carries in a single season in his career there with the Volunteers. Is it too far a drive away in Knoxville? Now he's probably not in Knoxville training and whatnot, but surprised that he ended up not being here. So those are your guys not practicing this week. Now let's get to some guys who are practicing, and not only are practicing, looked like the best players in their respective positions. We will start with Jackson Powers, Johnson. To me, the best player on the football field day one of the Senior Bowl. And it started at the weigh-ins when he tipped the scales at over 330 pounds. That is a big boy for the center position. So center, compared to all the other positions, is the lightest position along the offensive line. Guys routinely tip the scale somewhere between 300 to 310 pounds. That's not unheard of. It's because it's a position where you have to move, right? You have to be able to climb to the second level, locate linebackers. You have to be able to clean out pockets left and right. Lateral agility is at a premium for the center position just based off of where it is. And at 330, he doesn't sacrifice lateral agility. He had some uber impressive reps in the one-on-ones. Go just search his name on Twitter and you'll see all of them, which is a function I love, by the way, about how easy the Senior Bowl makes watching the video right after practice, or even, clipping it from the live broadcast, and it just gets shared wildly. So you can see all of this stuff, all these clips and all these players we're going to talk about. You just search their names, you'll see all the relevant reps. So hats off to Jim Nagy and crew for that aspect of it. But JPJ, as I'm going to affectionately refer to him as, Jackson Powers Johnson, this is what a first-round center looks like. I don't advocate this position often highly, just because, one, there's truthfully, it's a difficult position. It takes a lot. It's a multifaceted position. You've got to be, one, very smart. It's a position that is the most cerebral of any along the offensive line. You have to pick up assignments in a myriad of different situations, and you have to understand how the entire blocking scheme breaks down for you to do your job there at the center position. And then it's also physically demanding, like I was talking about in terms of the mobility aspect. And then it's also physically demanding that you have to be mobile, but then, oh, by the way, you're dealing with the largest man on the opposing offensive line. So Jackson Powers Johnson at 330, his ability to handle nose tackles, I raved about it during the season, how impressive it was that he could not only play in space in terms of leading out in screens, pulling to the edge, those sorts of things, but then he could take a head up, zero tech, one tech, move them off the ball one-on-one. That's a rarity for any center, let alone a true junior. This past year, PFF's highly graded center, one pressure allowed all season. In the one-on-ones, had maybe one bad rep, and it was questionable whether it even was bad. I love that he played some guard here too, because at that size, with that skill set, that guy can be a plug-and-play guard as well. Reminds me of Frank Ragnow a lot in that regard, coming out of Arkansas, and now obviously different, amount of tape that we had. Ragnow had played center, had played guard at Arkansas, and you felt good about plugging him in either. I feel the same way about JPJ. He's a top 25 pick, I think, at this point. I don't think 18 to the Bengals is too high. I think it really heats up when you go to the Miami Dolphins at 21, the Dallas Cowboys at 24. Definitely teams who would love just a plug-and-play center. Just a guy that you really don't have to worry about his projection at this point, in my opinion. Before we get to the next top performer here, today's podcast is brought to you by FanDuel. The NFL regular season is wrapping up. There's still time to get in on the action with FanDuel, America's #1 sportsbook. Right now, new customers get $150 in bonus bets guaranteed when you place a $5 bet. That's $150 in bonus bets, win or lose. The app is so easy to use, and there's so many different ways to bet, like same-game parlays. Find bets in the new Explore tab. Make a parlay in the Parlay Hub, the best way to find popular parlays, and more. So visit FanDuel.com/lockedon and make your first bet a layup. Cross-sport reference there. FanDuel, official partner of the NFL. All right, the other top performer, flip sides of the ball, another guy working his way up draft boards, Quinyon Mitchell, Toledo cornerback. If you go back to the preview episode, I said he had a lot riding on this week because at Toledo, he was almost exclusively an off corner. And yeah, his tape was awesome in doing so. 27 pass breakups to lead all of college football over the past 2 seasons, 6 picks, 41% completion percentage against, just off the charts numbers. The kind of where if, you had that production in the SEC, there's no real debate here. He would have been the CB1 in this draft class because he's that physically gifted, a multiple-time Freaks List guy for Bruce Holmes Freaks List. likely to run the 4.3s, 20-plus bench reps at 225. He is as solidly built a cornerback as exists in this draft class, and truthfully, like pound for pound, one of the stronger corners I've seen since I've started scouting. So he's just built like you want a cornerback to, but he didn't play in the SEC. He didn't play press man coverage. And those are two things, competition level and press man, that you just get worried about when projecting the next level, because they're just different sort of skill sets. It's a different game at the line of scrimmage that it is in off coverage. It's a different game going against MAC receivers that it is dudes with route running chops. You're not seeing in the MAC guys who even have the functional capabilities to make you wrong oftentimes, right? Like they're running routes as they are written on the sheet of paper. Who uses sheets of paper? On the tablet. How they're drawn on the tablet that they're looking at for their playbook, right? It's a different animal, and that's why competition level matters. But he went to the Senior Bowl and proved that it didn't really matter the competition level that he was facing there in the MAC. He looked like the best quarterback on the field, had really only one bad rep in the one-on-ones, and it wasn't even that bad. It was kind of he just got caught overextended on an in-breaker and gave up a catch. It happens. But to give up one catch, and I believe he had 5 one-on-one reps, it's just like, that's, the wide receivers have a distinct advantage in the one-on-ones. It's the same thing that I was talking about with JPJ, in that O-line, D-line has a distinct advantage in the one-on-ones. You're supposed to look good as the aggressor in these drills, as the guy who can dictate where they want to go. And so for someone to only have one tough rep all day long, that's impressive. So I do think he could end up as CB1. It's going to take a big week. It's going to take that performance every single day from him here, just because of all the things I outlined about that level of competition and about not having seen it, but the traits are there. And it's a quarterback class that I think is still fairly open in terms of what you want. I know Terrion Arnold has a lot of fans. I still see him as more of a slot corner in terms of his best role at the next level. So if you want a pure outside guy with a little more size to him, teams could trend towards Quinyon Mitchell. So he could be a top 20 pick. Another guy in that mix when it's all said and done. All right, to the wide receiver class here, which is not only deep in terms of the entire draft, where there's a ton of guys who are not here that will be first, second rounders, but it's still deep here. I'll give you a brief rundown of how I had them ranked prior to this week, heading into here. Of the guys here, I had Ladd McConkey, the Georgia wide receiver, as top 1. Javon Baker, the UCF wide receiver, number 2. Xavier Leggett, South Carolina, number 3. The first two I saw as second rounders. Leggett, third rounder. Malachi Corley, the Western Kentucky wide receiver, at number 4, third rounder type of guy. Braden Rice, USC wide receiver, closer to the 4th round. Devontae Walker, North Carolina wide receiver, closer to the 4th round. Luke McCaffrey, the Rice wide receiver, 4th, 5th. Jamari Thrash, Louisville wide receiver, kind of like a 5th. So those were your top 8 guys. And to me, day one, Ladd, McConkey, and Javon Baker were head and shoulders above. I already had them above the rest of the class, but to me, the gap is pretty wide. Those two, Ladd especially, is, him and Marvin Harrison are the 2 best route runners in this draft class. They get it. They have the physical capabilities to run them at a high level. Ladd's stop-start, lateral agility is just off the charts. It's how you would put together a slot wide receiver in the NFL. And the thing is, it's not just that he can play a slot, because the guy's going to run low 4.4. The thing you worry about him is just over a 6 foot. So he's 6 foot tall, but his wingspan is also just over 6 feet. So he's not long. Catch radius suffers, which is why you put guys in the slots, because the throws get easier. They don't have to necessarily range outside their frame as much. But to me, he's more a guy who can play inside and out. He's kind of like an Amon-Ra St. Brown in that regard, and that his best role is going to be like a hybrid you would love for him to be a guy that can just move all over the formation because he can put you in such difficult spots with his route running ability. But he was getting open at will. Javon Baker, much more of an outside wide receiver, the UCF wide receiver, but he went up against Cam Hart, Notre Dame corner, who's great press corner, a great matchup for him. And my gosh, his just twitch at the line of scrimmage, just the burst, and his ability to put you in difficult spots as a corner with his footwork and ability to explode out of multiple different body positions is impressive, man. It's truly, the guy has some juice behind him. And so those two really stood out on tape. After that, I thought Xavier Leggett had an iffy day. He came in shorter than a lot of people expected. Heck, a lot of people expected. Dude was listed at 6'3" and came in at 6'1". That's shorter than everyone is going to expect at that point. And had some just, he's a vertical tree guy that doesn't always show in one-on-ones when, you get some off-target passes like he did. So he'll have 2 more days to prove himself, but kind of just for him. I thought Malachi Corley looked solid. Nothing to dissuade me from the fact that he's just like a good slot weapon. Brendan Rice and Devontae Walker, though, struggled. The USC wide receiver and the North Carolina wide receiver, respectively. Rice, just with getting off of physical corners, guys getting their hands on him and not having answers for that. Walker, just in his ball skills and route breaks. He dropped, I want to say, 3 passes on the day and got sat on at the top of a few routes by Cam Hart, their M corner. I was just talking about that. Javon Baker kind of made look silly a couple times. Devontae Walker got his lunch eaten by him on one hitch route that got picked off, which if you listen to the preview pod or listen to me talk about him before, that was my worry about him. And so I think that was the only actually interception of the one-on-ones all day was that play versus Devontae Walker. So the speed's off the charts, man. He is explosive. It's just a guy that you have to know his skill set getting into it and not be expecting him to be a number 1 type of wide receiver. Luke McCaffrey was probably, of the rest, the most impressive. I thought his fluidity really showed. I liked his ability to kind of keep fighting to try to stack on the outside. Now, he's not a pure speed guy. That's never going to be his game. But he kind of, hip to hip, he started to stack a couple reps in the first day of the one-on-ones just because of physicality he plays with. So I thought he had a good day. And I think if he has a couple more days like that, he could play his way, maybe not necessarily top 100, but early into day 3. Before we get to the offensive tackle class, last thing here, I guess brought to you by Gametime. Gametime is the fastest and easiest way to buy tickets for all sports, music, comedy, and theater events near you. And right now, all users get $100 off when they buy a big game ticket with code VEGAS100 with killer last-minute deals, all-in prices, views for your seat, and their best price guarantee. Gametime takes the guesswork out of buying tickets. See the view from your seat before you buy so you know exactly what to expect when you arrive. All-in prices show your total up front so you know you're getting a great deal before you check out. And you can buy tickets in seconds with just 2 taps. Take the guesswork out of buying tickets with Gametime. Right now, again, all users get $100 off big game tickets with code VEGAS100. Terms apply. Download the app. Use code VEGAS100 for $100 off. If you're not going to the game, use code LOCKEDON for $20 off your purchase. Download Gametime today. Last minute tickets. Lowest prices. Guaranteed. The offensive tackle class, and then we will wrap this up. Because again, day 1, only a few things you can really talk about on the practice field. But the offensive tackles, I thought they were as advertised in the first day. Now, there's 3 guys, I'll say, that are getting serious first-round hype that are on the football field there. They are Taliesin Fuaga, the Oregon State offensive tackle, Patrick Paul, the Houston offensive tackle, and Tyler Guyton, the Oklahoma offensive tackle. All guys who are seniors or fifth-year guys. So all fit the bill of the Senior Bowl. And all guys that if you looked at any first-round mock, you would probably see all three of their names. They ticked the weigh-in boxes, Patrick Paul especially. Man came in with 36 and a quarter arms. He's probably at 36 and a quarter arms for a while now. But we just found out that at the Senior Bowl, 7'3", nearly, wingspan. Dude just stands out with his frame in a way that kind of like DeJuan Jones stood out last year. DeJuan Jones obviously a lot heavier than Patrick Paul, and I do worry a little bit about Paul's anchor in pass protection. Did get exposed on day one by Chris Braswell via bull rush, but he just has so much leeway with those arms, knows how to use them well. I do think he'll be a first rounder. To me, he's kind of like I was talking with someone at practice about this. He reminds me kind of like a Morgan Moses in that I don't know if you'll ever consider Patrick Paul. Like, I don't know if the ceiling for him, best case scenario, is Pro Bowl, All-Pro, perennial type of player. But that's not necessarily what you don't have to have that at offensive tackle, right? He's a guy that I think can be a consistent pass protector. Reminds me of like a Morgan Moses, where he can just be a solid tackle for almost said a decade plus starter. But he can just be a solid tackle for you, and that's well worth a first round pick in today's day and age. So, fan of his game. Thought outside of that bull rush rep that he looked really good with his hands in pass pro. Taliesin Fuaga, the Oregon State off tackle, the anchor was top notch. I still do have questions about him in pass pro. Going to look forward to the next 2 days of seeing him in that regard. But I thought he held up well in the reps he did have against guys like Laiatu Latu, who you worry about, kind of. The guys who are twitchy laterally, the guys who can kind of test his foot speed. I thought he looked solid in that regard. And then Tyler Guyton, to me, was the most impressive offensive tackle of the day. And this was big for him because on tape at Oklahoma, he doesn't get tested a lot. It's all a lot of three-man rushes. Doesn't have a lot of, true pass blocking reps on tape to point to where it's like, oh, wow, that was, what he's going to be doing consistently at the next level. And did that the first day of Senior Bowl practice. So that's a guy who could be a top 20 pick. Those three tackles, I think you're looking at Fuaga somewhere in the 10 to 20 range. Guyton playing his way kind of maybe into that range as well. Could go as high to someone like the Raiders there at 13. Bengals at 18. Who knows? But I thought those three guys all looked well. And I'll give a shout out to Kingsley Suamataia as well. I said on the preview pod that he had the most to kind of gain from this week. And while he wasn't perfect by any means, and that was going to be obvious based off his tape at BYU, he wasn't going to come here and dominate, right? He impressed me with his anchor and the play strength. So a true junior coming out, a guy who was, top 10 Bruce Feldman Freaks List guy. Movement skills off the charts. I worried about just some ugly reps in the running game, his ability to sustain blocks. But I thought when guys kind of got their hands on him, when he kind of lost initially, I was really surprised by his ability to recover in pass protection. I thought it was very impressive to where I could see him being a guy in pass pro more so after day one of practice than I could based off of his tape when I saw at BYU, just because one, level of competition, but two, also just the quality of some of the reps I saw there. So encouraging signs for him. Very, 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 as I always say, excited to watch these guys the rest of the week. Thank you for tuning in. We'll have more of a stock up, stock down pod tomorrow. But that was your Day Long Storylines on the Senior Bowl. Until next time, you listen to Renner Ranks, part of the Lockdown Podcast Network. Your team every day.